Hi, welcome back to Cheyenne, Wyoming Urban Gardener. This is Debbie, and this is Gardening Zone 5A, 5B. But today we are looking inside because it is kind of a rainy, gloomy, nasty day out there. We're going to be down in the upper 40s all day today, and pretty much low 40s tonight. So it's not really going to be much of a temperature change throughout the day, but it is kind of rainy, and well, that's great for our soil out there and all of our plants that are already out in the ground, so you can see out there through the windows what it's just kind of looking like today. Just lots of gloom and grayness, but we've got lots of greenery going on inside. You can see all of my plants. I've got a lot of them outside acclimating to the weather already. But there's quite a few that are still inside. Celery being one of those. We still have some celery in here. And then we still have a few tomatoes in here that were, well, I'm just protecting them a little bit more because they like a little bit more warmth than what's going on outside, like the black Krim and the Kellogg's breakfast tomatoes. They prefer for it to be a lot warmer. So anyway, what we're looking at today is our fuchsia plants. And I've had a lot of people ask me questions about fuchsia plants, and I've explained to them that you can actually eat the leaves and the flowers. See those beautiful, beautiful flowers on the fuchsia plants, and they also have fruit that you can eat as well. Berries, kind of like a fruit berry. It's supposed to taste somewhat similar to a blueberry, but I've not actually eaten these. I just use them for decoration. They're really, really pretty, especially when you have a whole lot of these vines in a hanging pot, like a hanging container or something like that. They just stream down with all of these little blooms on them, and they remind me quite a bit of bleeding hearts, except more open, and they're a similar color to the bleeding hearts. Just really, really beautiful. They have loads and loads of blooms on them. They will bloom all throughout the spring and summer. You can transplant them outside if you're in a warmer area, a warmer zone, say garden zone 8 or 7 even. They would probably overwinter, but here they don't overwinter, so we actually have to bring them inside. But they do make a great container plant as well. And you do have to keep them kind of cut back, because if you leave them in a container and you just let them go, they just keep getting longer and longer and longer. And the longer that they get is the more spindly that they will get. So you actually kind of have to keep them chopped back, is what we say, just chopping it back. And you can propagate the cuttings, which is something I'm going to show you how to do today. I've already done the propagation on my cuttings, but what you would do is, say, for instance, you have a plant like this. You can see it's bloomed down here. And you look for these segments here where you can see little bits of growth down in the joints, and then you would say cut right here. You would cut here, and then you would take this upper part of the plant and just put it in a vase of water, just like our mint is over here. So you would just put it in a little vase of water or a cup of water. Anything really works, and just sit it on a windowsill in the sun, and pretty soon, maybe in a week, 2 weeks at the most, you'll start getting roots on your plant, and then you can go ahead and plant it in the soil. And you can see here that some of it did make contact with soil in those joints even after I propagated these and put them in containers, because you can see that little offshoot to the side. And the same is happening here with this one. And not so much with this one, because this one was a more distressed little plant when I put it in here. But it has quickly caught on, and you can see there is some growth in the joint area. So I could even propagate these right now by taking cuttings from the top. But I'll show you what we do here in just a moment. So here you can see the cuttings that I have right now that I'm going to get rooted. And you can see the roots already through the glass. There's plenty of roots here. They're nice and long. 2 to 3 inches long is the best for having them propagate successfully. I've not really had them have any issues even with some shorter roots, but I do prefer for them to be about 2 to 3 inches. And in this, we have about 5 or 6 plants. I'll get them separated out, and we even have a bloom on one of these, and it will continue to bloom. They're pretty hardy little guys. So once you get that planted, it will begin to bloom. and shouldn't suffer it at all. In fact, we've even had some growth on one of them in here. It has gotten a lot longer than what it was originally when I cut it. And then I have some containers here. Just some leftover containers from prior plants. You can see I haven't even taken the labels off. I'm just using these to propagate or to transplant into. So I've got a few of these little guys here. I'm going to fill those up with soil and we'll get to transplanting those out. All right, and you can see here each of our little plants that are separated out. We ended up with 5, 6 if you count the one that we have with only one root on it. I don't know yet if I'm going to plant this one separately because it basically only has these little 3 leaves at the top and 1 root. So this one might suffer a little bit. I do see a little bit of growth. Hard to focus right there on the tip of one of those little joints that used to be there. So I may go ahead and get this one planted in a separate little container. So I'll need to get one more container. But I do have 6 little individual plants here. And then we have our containers that are all filled up with soil now. And then we're going to go ahead and get these all nice and moist. And I basically just run the little bit of water in them until I see it running out the bottom, and then I'll leave it sitting for just a little bit. And we're going to do that with each one of these. And I've already did some transplanting of some other plants going on as well. I've got some orange hat tomatoes and things like that I'm transplanting out. So like I said, I'll just leave that sitting for a moment just like that. And then I will actually come back and water that again just so it makes sure that it gets the soil all damp all the way through to the bottom. So that's what we're doing, is just getting this all nice and damp. I just make a pool of water on the top and then let it drain through. They have good drainage in them. These are actually really good containers. And I do try to reuse and upcycle every container that I receive plants in, whether it's one of my own plants that I've purchased these little containers, or if I've been given a container. If it doesn't have enough drainage, then I'll come back in and actually make a little bit more drainage in the bottoms. And we just keep these containers going, sometimes for years that we reuse these, as long as they don't get any cracks or anything. And sometimes even the cracks, I don't bother with those, and just continue using them because they will still maintain holding the soil and everything inside. All right, so here's the first container that we had, and it has already drained. You see it doesn't take very long at all to get those all nice and moist. And now I have my little tiny spade here. You can find these little kits that have these small tools in them. You can see how small this one is. And that helps out with just transplanting indoors so you don't really make a mess anywhere. I still get a little bit of a mess, but at least it's contained a little bit more. So we're going to go in and just make a little hole in the soil. So there you go. You can see how big of a hole that I made. I try to make it pretty deep just so it'll be able to accommodate the roots that we have on the plant. I'm going to take this first one. We'll just take the one that has the bloom on it. And it actually has the most roots as well. So that one was quite substantially healthy. And we just sit it down in there. You can remove the leaves off the bottom if you want to, but I go ahead and leave them on. And if they die off, those bottom leaves, then that will actually be more nutrients in the soil. So then I just kind of work those roots into the system of that hole and gently cover it up. And just make sure you get all the roots down in there. Sometimes they're a little bit difficult to get all the way down in. And then just try to get the soil up around as much as you can. It's very difficult for me to do while I'm holding the camera because I'm actually using a cell phone to do all my videos. So it makes it a little bit more difficult. And my tripod is right now misplaced because of our home being on the market. So here's what I do. I just try to smooth out the leaves as much as possible because I like to keep as many leaves as I can and just not have them die off. And yet I have not lost a whole lot of leaves on these guys. So, and you just put the soil up around where you've put the roots in, and then you're good to go. So then you can sit this down in, say, a tray just like this. So that way the water drains through, and then make sure you're sitting them in a windowsill. Or you can even put them outside as long as it's in a shaded area for a little while until they start rooting into the soil. And then you're good to go. They're very, very tough little plants. The fuchsia is a very tough plant. So it will root in not very long. It only takes a couple of days for these to get rooted in really well. And you can see this little guy already has some growth in the joints. So it will start putting on growth like crazy. And it'll start blooming like crazy very, very, very shortly. So if you have a whole bunch of those, you can put a whole bunch of them in a hanging container, and you will have beautiful, beautiful display of full blooms. All those nice little pinkish red blooms will be in that hanging container, and it just is absolutely beautiful. Now, if you plant these in ground outside and you have them over winter and everything, these little guys will turn into a bush. They actually get into a bush with a woodsy stem, and they can get 3 to 5 feet tall if they're taken care of, and just beautiful, beautiful blossoms. Anyway, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for notices on new videos as they come out. And I'm going to keep trying to do some little tutorials like this from time to time. So I hope everybody's enjoyed it and that it helps you to transplant. And if you're wondering, how do I transplant those little plants? Maybe this will help out. We'll see you in the next one.